important subject for everybody here. I'm Dr. Pat Fletcher. I'm a consultant in occupational medicine at Adam Brooks, and I've had an interest in sleep medicine for many years and been associated with some of the work done at Oxford, which we'll quote a little bit in this as well. But I know they've got a Department of Sleep Medicine here at Adam Brooks as well. In terms of shift work and sleep, we're going to talk a little bit Are we ready to go? Stop going to the next screen. We're having just trouble with the screen trying to get the slides transferred. I can't, it won't go onto the next screen at the moment. So what we're going to talk about today is circadian rhythm, what's a normal cycle, the body clock and how it works, whether we're all owls or larks, what helps the new developments. I've been asked as well to do something at the end, or my colleague Rachel, on something about the menopause. We all know about circadian rhythms. It's the 24-hour cycle that really underpins our whole metabolism. The light and dark are some of the main points that start it off, but it's also affected by what they call chrononutrition, the fluid intake, stress, and our social environment. Basically, the way it works, we've all got different rhythms, but to start off with the one that affects mostly our how awake we feel, that's the cortisol, which starts to rise up after midnight, about 6 in the morning, starts to rise up, reaches a peak about 11-12 a.m., which on cognition is when adults are meant to be at their most productive, and then slowly wanes down. And then the melatonin starts off around about 6 o'clock in the evening. That promotes sleep, makes you feel sleepy, goes up to about midnight, 1-2 in the morning, has a little dip, and then goes down again. And there's various other cycles just the same. Our body temperature falls at night and then goes up in the morning when we wake up, and blood pressure drops at night and then goes up in the morning. And in fact, the peak time for strokes is later in the morning, so we need to think really about when we give blood pressure medication and different things, because it doesn't always fit in with the circadian cycle. They discovered that the body clock is one of the most important parts which determine it. And in 2017, a group of scientists received the Nobel Prize for working out about the master clock. And we've got a very little presentation, a little bit goes on about that now, which I'm just going to play for you.
I'm not sure if anyone can hear me, but we've got no sound on this little YouTube video that you're showing us.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. Okay. Fun. We can send it separately. I think we'll stop it now and we can send that one separately to you. Basically, it's about the master clock. It was a nice video, which I thought explained it better than me, but I can. There was in 2017, there was Nobel Prize winners discovered there was the master clock, which had a whole load of cells that met just above the eye in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and that influenced all the other clocks in the body. They found, in fact, that there are peripheral clocks all over the body that concerns the bowel, the gut, the skin, and everything else. And they are fine-tuned by the master clock, but they're all affected by our 24-hour rhythm and therefore affected by night work and shift. Now, when you sleep really affects many parts of our brain. It's very responsible for cognition, so that if you get sleep deprived, it affects the way you can process information. Adults tend to be at their best in problem solving and everything else between 11 and 12 in the morning, whereas at 4 or 5 in the morning, it's probably at their lowest, and that's often when people are working at night. It can affect your immunity. They have done a study, they haven't done it on COVID vaccine, but they did one in 2016 on giving flu vaccines to adults over 70. And they found that if you gave the vaccines in the morning, they got a much better immune response than if you gave the vaccines in the afternoon. It also affects emotional processing, which is really important. They found that if you deprive people of sleep and you give them the same sort of stimuli as to people who aren't deprived of sleep, and you ask people to remember what's happened during the day or that night, they actually can't remember the positive. If you're deprived of sleep, you tend to only remember the negative things that have happened. And of course, that can affect the way we feel, and it affects mental health. They found that even one of the early warning signs of a lot of disorders like schizophrenia and bipolar is that people's sleep pattern tends to go, and that one of the research things they're doing at the moment is actually by working on their sleep patterns, it looks as if that can improve their actual physical condition. And we know that it actually affects the mental health if people are tired and can't sleep properly. A lot of people use different drugs to help sleep. Caffeine's the most widely consumed one, and it does work because when you get very sleepy, you get a whole build-up of adenosine in the brain and in the body, and that makes you sleepy. But caffeine actually blocks those adenosine receptors and stops you being sleepy, so it can be very useful as a quick fix if you're feeling very tired. The only problem is its half-life is a long one, so that it might stop you feeling sleepy at the time, but maybe 6 to 8 hours later you actually can't sleep so well, and it interferes with the quality of sleep. The obvious other one is alcohol, and I'm afraid I can't promote drinking too much, except it does help you get to sleep without a doubt, but it interferes with the quality of sleep later on, tends to make people wake up more, and interferes with information processing. Light's very important because it sets the body clock, and blue light in particular is produced more by screens and mobile phones, and they think that affects the melatonin levels, which is why people say try and turn off screens at least an hour or so before you go to bed at night. On the other hand, actually being exposed to light in the morning promotes the production of melatonin and some feeling good type processes within the body. And if you have light at dusk, it actually delays your cycle. So teenagers who might not be exposed to much light in the morning but have more dusk time light reset their bodies to wake up later and later. If we look at sleep and circadian rhythm disruption disorders, I'll concentrate mainly on shift work disorder because that's the main issue for people working in the health service. Then we know that sleep actually helps cell regeneration, it helps our immunity. If you don't get enough sleep for 36 hours, if you're deprived of sleep, it means that you don't actually produce enough immune cells within the body, and it can raise the risk of getting lots of diseases. They can affect mood. If you're tired, we all know we don't actually feel at our best, but we may be less good at problem solving, less creative. It's also shown, and more negative thoughts, as I've said before, but also they found that people actually tend to not judge things so well. They tend to be more risk-taking and more impulsive, and the ability to problem solve goes down. There's an increased risk of metabolic disorder for people who are on night shifts, particularly long term, and that's partly because there's a increase in one of the hormones that controls how hungry we are, called ghrelin, and that tends to go up when people are sleepy, so you get hungrier and you crave food, particularly carbohydrates. And if you can, and then you still stay hungry. And of course, at night, often in hospitals, there isn't much in the way of healthy food available, so that may link into that. We know that the risk of accidents goes up when people are tired, and on 12-hour shifts, particularly on the second or third shift, the risk of accidents can double. And because of all these effects, the WHO have actually considering whether shift work could be a possible carcinogen. So we do need to take it seriously. It's not all doom and gloom. There are things that we can do about it. And it's very much affected. Some people cope really well with night shifts. Depends a bit whether you're an owl or a lark. I tend to be a lark married to an owl, which isn't very good for communication sometimes. So as a lark, I tend to wake up bright and early by about 6 a.m. Fall asleep at about 9 o'clock, whereas my husband is certainly not bright and early at 6 a.m. And there's no point talking to him about anything very much till about 11 a.m. when he feels a bit more alert. And yet he's really quite able to chat about anything and concentrate before midnight, whereas really I need to be asleep by then. And there's a lot to be said when they looked at people's genetics. There's actually a difference in some of the amino acids which determine whether you're a lark or an owl. And we're all changed a little bit in our lifetimes as well. Teenagers almost naturally tend to become more owls, and their shift sleep pattern changes so that they are often more alert about 2 hours after normal adults would be, and need to go to bed a bit later and aren't very good early in the morning. And there's been some work done in Oxford which shows that if you shift the time they actually start school, or when they do exams or maths or tricky science things, they actually tend to do better and can concentrate better. So Russell Foster, who's professor at Oxford in circadian rhythms and neuroscience, has written lots of books and research on sleep patterns, and some of his advice saying try and work out what kind you are, because certainly people who are night owls are a lot better at adjusting to shift work and night shifts than larks. And a lot of organisations think that if we could work out what type we were and develop shifts around whether we were night owls or larks, it would actually help people manage. It probably goes back to early days when we were trying to be a tribe, and you'd want some people alert in the morning and some people alert at night to keep everybody safe. So maybe we could consider something more like that for how we work. Coping with night shifts is really difficult. Some people do find it much easier than others, but nearly everybody on night shifts has poorer quality sleep, and it's worse the second or third night in that shift. So there's some tips really. If possible, before you start the night shift, have a sleep or a nap later in the day. You're likely to get sleep deprived, so being a bit ahead of yourself can help. Having a meal before you start can also help because of the gut biome. We don't want to be eating normally too late at night. Looking at nutrition, if you have something that's high in carbohydrates, it actually makes you more sleepy. So it's worth, if there isn't food available makes any sense in the hospital, it might be worth bringing some healthy snacks, some fruit, nuts, yogurt, just to keep you going during the day. Make sure you've got enough to drink. The light at night, even in hospital, is still dimmer than you'd ever get outside during the day. So some places use light boxes, and try, if possible, have frequent breaks, because particularly in a 12-hour night shift, it's been shown to reduce the risk of accidents. There's always been a case for taking a short nap if you can. It isn't always, not everybody's got facilities for doing that, and it can't be appropriate everywhere, but if there are ability to take a very short sleep of 30-40 minutes maximum, that can actually help people from becoming too sleepy later on in the shift. Sometimes going for a short walk can help alertness, and coffee definitely helps, but try not to take it after about 2 a.m. because we know that means then you might not be able to get to sleep later on in the day. We know that decision making and risk taking and accidents are more likely between 2 and 4 a.m. So if it's possible to double check on any decision making and talk to other people, just to bear all that bit in mind. One of the big worries is the safety going home. There was a study done of junior doctors, and they found that 57% reported that they had micro sleeps on the way home, and that of course can very much lead to the risk of accidents. So if you know you're going to be too tired, please don't drive because of that risk. Look at whether public transport's possible, or even a short nap before leaving the hospital. Some people book hospital accommodation for the next day to try and help with that. There is the Deakin Centre, which has got some great facilities, but unfortunately it's a little bit far from the main hospital for everybody to use it. But sometimes it might be possible. It's got some areas within that where it might be possible to have a rest or listen to a podcast or something before driving back if you're tired. When you get back, if possible, try and talk to whoever you're with about the importance of sleep, because it's very much the case that everybody thinks, so you're home, so perhaps you could do this, you could do that, you could do the other, collect the children from school. There's always different competing demands during the daytime. But if you can, it depends on whether you've had enough light on your way home. If you have a lot of light on your way home, you might not be able to go to sleep quickly. But if you can, have a light meal when you get back, about 20 minutes before going to sleep, and get to bed as quickly as you can. You might need to sleep in 2 phases and sleep for a few hours, wake up, do a few things, and then try and sleep for at least the maximum sleep before you're due to go back on night shift if you can. Screen time, again, the reason for avoiding it is the blue light. Some people find meditation, podcasts, things for calm very helpful. There's also an organisation called Sleepio, which is free for NHS and can be very useful. And we know that a drop in body temperature actually helps promote sleep. So it's worth making sure your bedroom isn't too hot before you go to bed, and try and keep to the routine that you normally have that helps you sleep at night, and try and avoid too many interruptions. Just really prioritize your sleep, because sleep is one of the most important powers that we've got, really. So I know that Margaret Thatcher at one point is quoted as saying sleep is just for wimps, but it's anything but that, really. I've also been asked to talk briefly about menopause and sleep, and I think we all know that menopause can cause problems in the perimenopause because of the increase in night sweats and temperature regulation. Looking at trying to keep healthy and looking at probably the gut microbiome might be one of the important things we could think about during that time as well. Avoiding nicotine and coffee and alcohol late night and evening. Reducing stress as much as you can, because it's harder to fall asleep. And they talk all about I would say, try before people go to bed, try and write down anything that might be worrying them, what you can do about it, but what you can't at the moment, because otherwise the worries keep going through your head. A lot of people wake up, particularly in the menopause, during the night, and they notice it more than before. So it's worth having a podcast or something to listen to, fall asleep. Try and get your temperature down before you go to bed, and keep your bedtime thermostat to about 18 degrees or a bit under. Some people use actual mattresses that are temperature regulating. There's still research being done on that, but they do seem quite promising. And in that case, try and avoid napping during the day for longer than about 20 minutes. Menopause can really affect people's sleep, but it's really a subject all of its own. So I'm only touching on it very briefly today, but do seek further help from the wellbeing team and others to help cope with that. Now, I've just finished quickly my production. This is some of the references and fact sheets. There's some very good books on sleep, particularly Matthew Walker. And there's been a very good one by Russell Foster, and a recent one by Michael Mosley, which I think is an excellent one, and nice and quick and easy to read. And there's a Sleep Foundation that provides some information and a whole lot from the NHS as well. But it's a big topic. I've tried to go through it fairly quickly, but if anybody wants to ask any questions or anything else, then let me know.
Hi, Patricia.
Yeah.
There was a question from Jan. How can we get CBT for not sleeping?
I don't quite know how. There is a very good self thing on CBT. I've got some qualifications in CBT and for sleep, and it's really important. There's an organisation called Sleepio, which was set up by Colin Espy, who's at Oxford now but used to be at Glasgow. And it should be free for all NHS staff, and that uses a lot of cognitive therapy techniques that you can, and it's like a self-guided approach, and it should be free for NHS staff. So I'd say that would be the first one to turn to. I don't know if we've got some specific CBT for within Addenbrooke's, but I will try and find out and get back to you. It's one of the things we'll follow up on, because I think it would be really useful. There's also some stuff through the Work Health Foundation, which is has some videos on it, and we can share you a link with on Sleepio, that will be something we'll follow up with for you. During COVID, the NHS, it's actually also available in the south of England and in the Thames Valley. So I will check on that, because it was free for everybody, not just the NHS in the Thames Valley, when I left before we moved here over a year ago. So they may well make it. If we ask, we may well be able to get it for people at Addenbrooke's. I can try and find out that for you. Okay, well, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for listening. I'm sorry we had trouble with the getting the slides on and that you couldn't hear that presentation, but we'll put that presentation out separately for you later, and we'll see where we are. And thank you. I'm glad that Health Assured has got some useful resources. Thank you.